Welcome to What a Creep, the show with Margot Donohue and Sonia Mansfield talking about creeps from the past to the present.
This is your quick guide to the biggest creeps, jerks, assholes, and losers, the best of the worst.
From two nice ladies who want the world to be a little less creepy.
Welcome back to What a Creep. This is Margot Donohue, and my cohort in creepitude, as always, is the amazing Sonia Mansfield. Hey, Sonia.
Hello, my friend.
Hello, my friend. Y'all can't see her, but Sonia said she's giving me the full Sonia experience. She is in her pajamas and no makeup, and y'all, she looks as pretty as a daisy.
You're very kind. It is the week of Thanksgiving here in America. I have the week off, which means I ain't doing shit.
And we celebrate that.
That's not. Yes, exactly. I'm thankful that I don't have to do shit today. So hence I'm in my pajamas still. It's the best.
It's supposed to be a one-day holiday here in America, and I always like it because it's not religious.
Yes.
90% of the people I know get that day off, unless you have to work at a store or at the hospital or something like that. We always we think about y'all. I've done that. I've had to work on Thanksgiving before.
Me too. I've worked Thanksgiving before too, and it's one of my favorites because, like you said, it's not religious. It doesn't involve gifts.
Right.
It's just about seeing people and eating foods, and I like both of those things.
And it's the nice big setup to the holiday season. Hanukkah, Christmas, New Year's, Kwanzaa, all the things that you celebrate.
Festivus.
Festivus for the rest of us. All you Sagittariuses have your birthdays coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're here celebrating. So what we're going to do today is we're going to be replaying an episode because the day after Thanksgiving in America, I don't know if it's worldwide, but it's called Black Friday, and that's when shopping starts, and nobody can think straight for a few days. And then it's weeks of parties and Christmas shopping. So we're replaying our episode Keith Raniere from Nxivm, because this is a show that I hosted. I took, I led with this episode.
Yeah.
And Sonia finally got to see
the
HBO shows. Max.
Yes. On Max. When Margot was doing her episode on Keith Raniere, she told me not to watch The Vow, so it would all be new to me. It's more fun for y'all if it's new to me.
Right.
So I didn't watch it, and then honestly, I just moved on. But then I went down a cult rabbit hole, and I started watching Escape from Twin Flames on Netflix, and then I was like, I want to watch more cults, like you do, and decided to watch The Vow. And I fucking devoured The Vow in both seasons in less than a week. And I'm really glad that we're replaying it because I will actually now re-listen to that episode.
Since then, there's been a second season of The Vow, and what they've done is they've gone back, and it's actually very interesting. I think it's just as good as the first season. The people that have changed and the people that have not changed. I didn't realize at the time that he was imprisoned in a prison that we have here by a Costco in Brooklyn. So I suggest next time Sonia comes out, we do a get together. We go to the Costco, get the hot dogs and everything, whatever you want to eat there. Then we'll sidle on over to the jail and make fun of him.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
It'll be hilarious. So that'll be coming up.
Yeah, I will say the entire time I watched it, I just kept repeating in my head, this guy?
Yes.
This guy? This guy? This is the person that all of these people, let me rephrase that, all of these women are fucking. I'm what? What? But cults are a thing, man. That's why they're called cults. They fuck with your head. And look, the things he did, man.
Yeah.
Fuck that guy. I hope he rots.
Yes. Yes, indeed. We all hope he rots. He's rotting in Brooklyn by the Costco. That's all. And there's somebody else that's famous that's staying there.
Yeah, but let's go buy a massive amount of toilet paper and we'll
there
swing
you
by
go.
and then we'll swing by and throw it. Fucking asshole. What a fucking monster.
He certainly is. If you're new to our show, by the way, we do use salty language. Oops, if you didn't know that.
Sorry about that, y'all. I should have gave you the heads up.
We're just going to give you the rigmarole now because then we'll just roll into the episode, so you don't have to deal with that. But we have a Facebook page, a basic one. That's where people go to complain about our language. We actually are much more interactive in our Facebook group. Lots of great activation going on there. It's a nice place. Yes. It's a safe space. And you just type in What a Creep podcast group. You have a couple of questions to answer. The most important one is that you don't act like an asshole when you're in there. Just promise not to be a creep. The other questions, just give them your best shot. That's all we ask. We're on all the other social media things at What a Creep, except for Twitter, which is probably dying by the vine anyway. I don't know if you've noticed. I've noticed.
Oh, I have noticed that all of the ads it's showing me are for sex toys.
Oh,
which
my God.
I was like, by the way, other people are getting other ads.
See, I'm not getting sex toy ads at all.
Clearly, Twitter has something it wants to tell me.
I was getting all the Cheech and Chong ads for their.
Oh no, I get those
company.
too. Yeah, I get those too, but I have noticed a drop in ads from like say Apple or Microsoft, or because they have pulled their ads, and since then I've been getting a lot of sex toys, which means I really have just now told on myself to everybody who's listening to the podcast. But I honestly try not to go to Twitter that much because it's
a cesspool.
It's icky. It's icky. I don't like it. I'm much more active on Blue Sky now.
And Threads and Instagram, all those places. We're both interactive. We both have a TikTok. I'm at Brooklyn Margot. She's at The Sonia Show. We post stuff there as well. What else can I say? If you want to join our Patreon page, all the people that joined, thank you so much. We sent out the holiday cards to people that signed up in time. Sonia's taking care of that this week.
Yes, I am. They're all ready to go.
Yay!
It's happening.
On Patreon, we put up our first 8 seasons, and then we put out 2 bonus episodes a month. So we'll put out our second one next week. Where Sonia and I, it's called We Just Shoot the Shit.
Yes.
I also just wanted to talk about a little bit, our email, because we're always looking for suggestions for creeps and also for non-creeps. We always end the show with somebody who's a non-creep. It's very important to us. It's What a Creep Podcast, spelled it all out, at gmail.com. And if you would like some stickers, I'm getting on the sticker bandwagon, y'all, because I'm getting my holiday cards together, so I'll get them all out at the same time. So if y'all want some stickers, just send us an email. We will send them to you wherever you are on the planet of Earth. And I just wanted to give a quick update because we talked about Russell Brand in September. Mm-hmm. And what we've learned is in this past week, a man in his 40s attended a police station in South London on Thursday, 16 November 2023. The Metropolitan Police say in a statement declining to confirm whether it was Brand. It was Brand, y'all. There are women that have been coming forward since our last episode, and it's not because of us. We're not that powerful. But
no.
It was an international story.
Yes. Once the news broke, I believe we even said in that episode that more women would start coming out because they start to feel supported by the other women who are coming out. So this happens sadly a lot.
It takes like one person sometimes or 2 people who are brave enough to give their name. And, in the case of, we should just say like Diddy, Puff Daddy, Sean Combs, he was sued last week and then settled within a day. And he settled like on a Saturday morning, like he wanted that shit buried. So I'm wondering how many others will come forward after that. But this is what's happened with Brand. The London police said, look, if you have a complaint, please come to us. This also happened in Canada when we had not Gayam. What was his name?
Oh,
Jimon Gameshi? Gameshi.
Yes.
That asshole. That trial turned out really whack. But they did have women come forward. He's been sent to Siberia, essentially, socially. Russell Brand is still popular. So Russell Brand, and I have just a few more links, and I'll tell them in the show later, but he's really went from being this shaggy-haired, shagadelic, I'm a former addict, and very liberal and loving, to this very right wing. Like Tucker Carlson went on his show the second he got fired from Fox, and all kinds of wackiness.
Gross.
Yes,
and that's what a lot of these. I was going to say comedians, but really it's just fucking gross entertainers. Like they only that side of the entertainment sphere embraces that. Like polite society will not have Russell Brand now.
right.
So if he has to go to like the Tucker Carlsons of the world because they are the only ones who will have him. It's fucking gross. It's gross. This is the thing that like the MAGA people want to like hang their hat on. It's nasty.
It is. We also, Alice Hamilton, who's a comedian I really love. She had a TikTok that I also reposted on our Facebook feed, and she had a story about a friend that was from Australia that was asked to go to Russell's room, to meet up. She goes to meet up with him, and there's like this line of women, and she's like, no thanks. She leaves, and he calls her and says, I was saving the last one for you.
Ew.
Right? So
gross.
These stories are coming out. Let me go through all the sources because we
Yes.
don't make this shit up, y'all. And if you swipe, you can. Well, tell them about the website really quick.
You can go to whatacreeppodcast.com, and it's everything you want, need, desire to know about our podcast. It has links to all of our episodes, and in each of those descriptions are show notes because we source every single thing we do. We're not making it up, and we want to give people their credit. If you want to do a deeper dive on anybody, that's a great place to start. We have a link to our Substack, which people have been signing up for. It's free. That's our monthly newsletter. And we have a link to our merch shop. And there's t-shirts and tote bags where you can get our really adorable Everybody Drink logo on it, or various other things like the ones that say, damn it, Max, or the high road can get fucked, whatever you want.
Mine just says not a creep. And people come to my apartment and they're like, okay.
Okay, she's not a creep.
Let me just read these sources really quickly.
Yeah.
For the Nxivm part, it's Albany Times-Union. They did excellent work because it was based up there. South China Morning News, New York Times, Vice, CNN, Forbes, Vulture, LA Times, Oxygen, Rolling Stone, HBO's The Vow, Stars with a Z, called Seduced. Really great show. The Escaping Nxivm podcast from the CBC was excellent. The Ringer, Bustle, and Mark Vincent's blog post. He's also featured in part 2. And then Russell Brand, if you're looking for the latest news, we got it. Daily Mail. This is where Brand asks his fans to support him. I understand that a couple of our listeners pointed out about the Daily Mail. And this is the thing. This is our penance. Every time I mention the Daily Mail, I'm going to mention the Daily Fail, which is an amazing podcast that makes fun of and, thoroughly trounces on the Daily Mail. Just every once in a while, they do get the who, what, and where correctly. It's just their whatever.
Clock is right twice a day.
Exactly. People Magazine, Reuters, 2 New York Times articles, BBC, Complex, and Sky News. So all those are in the show notes. You can also just, swipe on the artwork and you should be able to find them. Yeah. Okay, so we'll have a new episode next week, a new full episode. Yes. We'll have a bonus episode if you're a Patreon member. Sometime December, if you're a Patreon member, you will get your card. But anywhere, once again, y'all want a sticker from us, let us know. I'll drop a couple of stickers in the mail for you. This is the season. It's Scorpio into Sagittarius season. Some of us are sensitive. It's family. It's finances, it's schedules, it's working on travel, all that's stressful, y'all. Yeah. So just what we want to just
be kind.
Say, be kind to yourself.
Be kind to people. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to others. The holidays are super fun and great for some people and really hard for others. Right. So just, be aware.
I want to say also, Paul Pape, my friend now, he mentioned on Facebook page, and he says what he does at the holidays is he goes out of his way to be extra nice to retail people because, and I've worked retail at the holidays. It is not fun. It is draining. If you could tip a little extra, do it, or just be that smile, even if they're not smiling back. Understand the crap people put up with.
Yes.
And just
so much crap.
So much crap. This whole customers always write stuff. And we're talking also about the waiters and waitresses and servers and bartenders and everybody that has to interface with the public when everyone's just being is stressed out. It's very hard. And they get maybe one day off. And then, right. So just keep that in mind. Also, just take care of yourselves. Do the things that make you feel good. Listen to music that you like. Put on movies that you enjoy. Hang around with your pets. Do all those things because it can be very stressful. Do all the things. Do the things that make you happy. And we will be back talking about creeps next week. We're figuring out what that's going to be. Oh, let's talk about dorking out.
Oh, yes.
What are we dorking out about right now? We just put out.
Right now is Dragnet. Thank God it's Friday.
I finally posted the video, the theme song for Dragnet.
Yes.
Paula Abdul, of course, did the choreography. You could see for yourselves. I'm not kidding.
What? Hilarious.
And what are we going to be dorking out about next, Sonia? It's timely.
It's so timely. We're going to be dorking out about JFK, the Oliver Stone movie with Kevin Costner, because I did not know this. It's the 60th anniversary of the assassination, and Margot has been watching documentaries about it, and there's a new one on Disney. Disney Plus.
Oh, I got to write that down. I saw the one on Paramount.
Yeah, and they're reliving the day. They're interviewing Secret Service agents and people who were there and stuff. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, that's on Disney. And we're going to be talking about the movie, which I actually rewatched recently when I went and saw Oppenheimer.
Oh, really?
Something about Oppenheimer kind of reminded me of JFK. And so I rewatched JFK, and I'm looking forward to talking to Margot about it.
And I've been doing some publicity or just setting up some social media posts. I think it's a cast of 400 people and all good actors.
I swear that was one of the things that this is why it reminded me of Oppenheimer, because even tiny little parts had people that you recognize in it. And JFK is like that. Every part is somebody that you're oh, I forgot this person's in there. So it's a good one. It's going to be very entertaining.
That's what we aim to do, Sonia.
That's what we aim to do. That's our thing.
That is our thing. All right. So follow us on all the things social media wise. Sonia, where can they find you?
At thesoniashow.com and The Sonia Show on all the things. What about you?
It's either at Brooklyn Fitchick or Brooklyn Margot. How about that? And my site is Brooklyn Fitchick, and the shows are posted there. And I'm at Brooklyn Margot on the TikTok and all the things. So once again, have a lovely Thanksgiving, or I hope you get through it. Whatever you need. You're not alone. There's somebody out there who feels the same way you do. Remember that. Mm-hmm. And so just do the things that make you feel better. And all right then, everybody, stay safe. Don't be a creep.
Be a creep.
All right, inhale, exhale. Are we ready to talk about our creep today?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so Sonia, do you know who Keith Raniere is?
Only because you've mentioned his name to me before.
Well, let's get into it. He made national news in the fall of 2017 when the New York Times exposed the self-help guru as a megalomaniac, a fraud, a user of women, a sexual abuser, and a person who allowed, if not blatantly enforced, a secret society of women in his Nxivm group to have sex rituals and human branding to show their loyalty to him. Keith claims to have had one of the highest IQs ever recorded, 240. That's 100 more than Madonna.
He claims?
Yes.
He claims.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I also claim to have a really high IQ.
Me too.
And I'm a size 4.
And I'm the Queen of France. He also claims that his IQ was so high it was in the Guinness World Book of Records. He says that he was a judo expert at the age of 12. He said that he taught himself high school math when he was 10 and college math in just 9 hours at the age of 13.
We all did that. Whatever.
He claims he can cure anyone from challenges like smoking addiction to Tourette's syndrome. He told women if they had sex with him, they would see a blue light of magic in their heads. I know. And when you see pictures of this guy, you're like, yeah, sure, he could fuck. He called himself Vanguard and created a self-help program called Nxivm, which for thousands of dollars could help men and women be their true selves and achieve enlightenment. His office in Albany, New York, had a retreat every year at the end of August called Vanguard Week, where his most devoted followers from around the world would praise him. Some of his followers included the wealthy and elite from politics, entertainment, and people being lucky enough to grow up wealthy with no boundaries on their trust funds. If that sounds judgy, I am sorry, but this guy makes me nuts.
Yep.
He is also a total fucking creep who scam people out of their money, dignity, and youth. He is a pedophile and a fucking asshole of the highest order. Trigger warnings for this episode: scam artists, cults, pedophilia, sexual assault, and shitty human behavior gone unchecked. My sources are several articles from the Albany Times-Union, the South China Morning News, New York Times, Vice, CNN, Forbes, Vulture, Los Angeles Times, Oxygen, Rolling Stone, HBO's 9-part series, The Vow, the Starz Network 4-part series, Seduced, Escaping Nxivm podcast from the CBC, The Ringer, Bustle, and Mark Vincente's blog post. You'll know who that is when I start talking about him. And it all begins with my favorite borough in the world, Brooklyn. Keith Allen Raniere was born here August 26, 1960, to James and Vera Raniere, who separated when he was 8. When he was young, his parents told him he was brilliant and ahead of the curve. This gave him a messiah complex, and he has been bragging about his apparent genius ever since. He said he had 3 degrees from college, RPI, Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. But the truth is, he barely passed with a C-level grade point average.
I don't understand. I thought he was a genius.
Wait till you hear.
Got it.
In the 1980s, Keith worked for Amway, which is one of the more famous MLMs here in the States. I don't know if it's worldwide or not, but Sonia, what do you know about Amway?
I just know it's all about like selling you crap. It's like a pyramid scheme, basically, right?
Right.
It's like an old-fashioned pyramid scheme. It's almost downright adorable.
Yeah, I had some friends that fell for it. Yeah. Did you know anybody who ever belonged to an MLM?
Someone I used to work with in college at the movie theater tried to like sell me Amway, and I was like, get the fuck away from me.
I should say MLM means multi-level marketing.
Yeah.
We shouldn't say pyramid scheme too much because they'll sue you for that, but multi-level marketing they're okay with. Anyway.
Right. Yeah. He came at me and was like, Sonia, do you know anything about Amway? And I was like, I know, I'm not interested. Thanks. Thanks, though. Bye.
Bye. Keith was also interested in psychology, neuro-linguistic programming, Scientology, and hypnotism. Aren't we all? In 1990, after working in computer programming for the New York State Parole Department, he formed his own company called Consumers Byline Inc., CBI. And it was a goods and services program that subsisted on paid memberships. So you paid to be a member, and then you could buy shit that was really cheap. He claimed to have 250,000 members that paid $19 a month. By 1993, he claimed to be worth $50 million and had 80 employees. His thing? He never carried money. He never learned to drive. He slept most of the day, and he preferred to work at night. Doesn't everyone enjoy a 1 a.m. meeting? That's Keith for you.
Obviously, yes.
Yeah. So one of his top salespersons was a married woman named Tony Natale, who moved to Clifton Park, New York, which is about 20 minutes from Albany. And Albany, by the way, is the state capital of New York. It's also a place that's very close to where they had the Kellogg Institute in the 1800s. Mormonism was started around that area. For some reason, there's a lot of woo and religions that are around the Albany area, this part of New York. I don't know
Something
why.
in the water there, huh?
There's something in the water there. So that's where he liked to be.
If you go to Albany, bring some bottled water.
Toni moves to Albany with her husband and her son. They work really closely with Keith. She's a top salesperson. Keith told Natalie that having sex with him was a part of her job, and she needed to leave her husband in order to achieve her personal goals. He nagged at her so much that he managed to convince her that her husband was having an affair with their nanny. By the way, he wasn't, but she broke up with her husband and then basically let her husband have custody of their son.
Oh,
Which always breaks my heart when that shit happens. And he wasn't having an affair. Keith is just a prick. Keith and Natalie were together for 8 years. In 93, after being investigated by over 20 states for running a pyramid scheme, I can say that because he was, Keith closed CBI. He and Toni then ran a vitamin company and a health store, but they both failed. In 1998, the couple meet nurse practitioner, hypnotist, and neurolinguistic expert Nancy Salzman. When Toni described Keith to Nancy, she basically diagnosed him as a sociopath. When Nancy met Keith for the first time, she became a superfan. Some people do. When they meet Keith, they're completely enthralled with him. Together, they formed ESP, Executive Success Program. And it was a program that was built to help people achieve their best selves. It's self-help. So instead of selling merchandise, he sold self-help. Keith at this time was kind of obsessed with Scientology. And he thought, if I can do what Scientology did with my own thing, I can make a lot of money. So, for example, he initialized things. One of them being like an EM. An EM was basically short for an exploration of meanings. It's just like in Scientology when they do, what is that called? When they have like a feedback meeting with them, when they're talking to another person in Scientology and just like they're going clear, they're like, they have those meetings.
Oh, okay.
You know what I'm talking about? It's also
Yeah,
like,
but
it's like also close like Catholic Church, like where you're giving your confession to a priest, or if you're going to a trained person like a psychologist and talking about your problems. But they called them EMs. And basically what they would do with you, Sonia, is they'd be like, Sonia, what's your big fear? And you'd say like, heights. They'd say, well, why do you have a fear of heights? And they would take you back to your earliest memory of being scared of heights and then teach you how to walk away from that, and then you wouldn't be scared of heights anymore. That's an EM. Suppressives, which is the exact same thing in fucking Scientology. Those are people who are holding you back, especially people who think Keith is a fraud.
Yes, of course.
Data is information without emotion. So cults do not like people who are emotional. They want you to be like a robot. They just want you. So it's data. That's what I always talk about in Nxivm. They targeted rich people and famous entertainers who paid thousands of dollars to learn these techniques. And
interesting how it's always the people that are super rich that need the most enlightening of their wallets.
Everybody needs enlightenment, but just, there's a lot of free counseling or inexpensive counseling out there. You don't need to shell out so much money. You don't have to. But this is the thing also with there's a lot of actors in here. Acting is a very unstable profession. You can be really popular one year and next year not make anything. And so there's a lot of instability. So I can see why actors and performers would be insecure and would want, like, what's the edge I can have when I go in on auditions and stuff like that. I don't blame people for that, but they preyed on them. Later, they changed the name to Nxivm, and it's spelled Nxivm, all capitals. It's not Nxivm like the heart medicine, the heart pressure. What am I thinking of?
Is it blood pressure medicine?
No. It's when you burp a lot. What's it called when you have
heartburn?
Heartburn. Thank you. Sorry, you guys. There's a medicine.
Side effects to Nxivm include.
Well, wait till you find out. Okay.
I know. Ugh.
He wanted to be called Vanguard after a video game he liked in the 80s. We'll get back to that. He was also, and this is always a big red flag for me, by the way. I know.
I didn't know that was a thing.
He wanted to be called Vanguard, and it was a game in the 80s. It was in the video arcades. I remember that from my Ute. But this is my biggest red fucking flag. And I'm going to apologize now, but I'm sorry and I'm not sorry at the same time. He was a big Ayn Rand fan. If you love the Fountainhead, I'm judging you. I have big problems.
Yeah.
He felt his need for power was justified because he was just so goddamn special. Anyone who joined Nxivm was encouraged to become a salesperson for the organization and earn commissions. So they would hassle all their friends and family to take courses and go to intensive trainings that could be anywhere from a weekend up to 3 weeks' time. One of the more popular programs was called Jeunesse, and that's spelled capital J, small case Ness, Jeunesse. I don't know what that stands for. Somebody will find out for me.
This reminds me of LA Story, where Steve Martin meets
Sandy?
Sarah. Yeah, Sandy. And he's like, oh, it's so nice to meet someone with a normal name. And she's like, big S, little A, big N, little D, big E, little E. And it's got a star on top of it. And I just like to surround it with a heart. Like,
we need to do that for Dorking Out.
Yeah, I'm writing it down.
Write that shit down. Okay. So Jeunesse was created specifically to empower women. And they had women that were on big TV shows at the time. This is like the late 2000s. Mid to late 2000s, excuse me. So Battlestar Galactica, Hawaii Five-0. They had like a bunch of CSI, like a lot of actresses from that time, especially actresses. So Nancy Salzman, excuse me, she sold it to people as the first program for women created by a man. Isn't that amazing?
What?
I know. Like,
that blew my mind.
Like mansplaining has never existed before. Are you kidding me?
Right. And that's how mansplaining was invented.
Exactly. So let me tell you about Keith's odd habits. He is surrounded by young, pretty women who strangely get skinnier and skinnier all the time. He never has a girlfriend, and he lives with a lot of women, but he claims he's a monk. He is married to his work. And I wrote this down, barf. He also prefers to greet people, mostly women, with a close hug and kiss on the lips.
No.
It's when you watch The Vow, they do a whole thing on HBO's The Vow where he's just greeting one woman after the other, and some men too, like with a close hug and kiss on the lips. In this COVID age, no fucking way. But it still skeeved me out.
Yuck. We should clarify. I have not seen any of the documentaries about this. I am coming into this. What's the word? I'm ignorant. That's the word I'm looking for. Very ignorant.
Inside the organization, members wore different color sashes to show their prominence with Vanguard. I know.
I'm going to call him Donkey Kong.
Oh, he's such a prick. Call him whatever you want. He's such a shithead. Okay.
I will.
Nancy Salzman went by the name Prefect. These people are ridiculous. This is the whitest shit ever, by the way. This is like... You see some people of color in the video sometimes, and they're just like, get the fuck... Like, no. People were extremely competitive about these sashes. And I think I remember that when I did take some martial arts when I was a kid, like karate, and you have like different levels of the belt you can wear. Remember that from Karate Kid?
Yeah.
Well, one of them that was really competitive about it was a Canadian actress named Sarah Edmondson. She was such a good recruiter. She opened a Vancouver office for Nxivm. To rent an office in Vancouver is fucking expensive, no matter what the economy. Like, that's a big fucking deal. Sarah could not understand how she could be a high seller, a teacher, and a recruiter with access to Keith in Albany, which was, once again, the home office for Nxivm. But she had a shitty sash compared to other people she thought were inferior to her. Another name you're going to hear in stories about Nxivm is a woman named Allison Mack. She's an American actress. She was in Smallville. That's all I know. I've never seen it.
I know her from Smallville. That's it.
When you watch her on The Vow, the HBO one, or on Starz Seduced, which is a terrible title, but it actually really works because this is what happens to people when they join the organization. They're seduced. It's grooming. He's a pedophile. Yes. He knows how to groom people. Ugh, I fucking hate this asshole. Okay. When Allison Mack is being filmed, and she's filmed all the time, and I'll explain that in a second, she is clearly in love with Keith. Like, massively, like, thinks he is amazing. And it's clear that Keith doesn't give a shit about her, but he's using her. And she will do anything to please him. Like, she thinks he is the sun and the moon and the stars. Going back to Vanguard Week, so that's up in the last week in August, up in Albany, New York, people from all over the world, and they had thousands of people pay for this. They would descend to Albany for a week. And actually, upstate New York in the summer is amazing. There are lakes, there's lots of trees. It's really beautiful. In the winter, it's cold and it's bullshit. And there's nothing going on. I mean, it's like our state capital. What's exciting at the state capital?
Nothing,
I say. When you go to these things for Vanguard Week, there were classes all day long. And that's what it is at all these things. They try to keep you just busy, busy, busy. And then at night, every night, they had a theater. And every night, there were skits and musicals in the auditorium.
It's just like summer camp.
I would fucking hate this. When I'm done, like, I want to go to my hotel room alone, my own room, not sharing with anybody. I just want to watch TV and order room service.
Yeah.
I'm not doing a fucking skit at the end of all this. And every performance was in honor of Keith.
Oh, God. Of course it was.
And they had people from, like I said, all over the world. He had a big crew from Mexico. He got in with the Fox family. So Vicente Fox, I believe his name is. He was president of Mexico for a while. His son was in Nxivm. And then his son had all these rich friends. And in Mexico, when you're rich, like, you're very separated from everybody else. It's like similar to Brazil. There's all these rich kids there. They're like, well, I want to help and I want to do well, but I don't want to be poor either. So what do? They were signing up for Nxivm, which is basic. Nxivm was going to change, like Scientology. It was going to change everything. If you change the way you think and the way you interact with people, it's going to change the world. These performances were like, the LA office took the song California Girls by the Beach Boys. Mm-hmm. But I think they took the David Lee Roth version.
I was just going to say, are you sure it wasn't the David Lee Roth version?
Which is lazy bullshit. How that ever became a thing is beyond me.
I don't know.
It's an embarrassment for my youth. But anyway, so they're like, the Vanguard on the West Coast, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh. And then on the stage comes a group from Mexico City, and they're doing a dance. And it's like sexy and cool and brilliant. And then there's another American group from someplace else, and it's like lame. It's the stupidest thing. Allison Mack goes on stage and sings a love song to Keith. All of this is on video.
What song is it?
It was her own song. She wrote it.
Okay.
Let me just say this of her as a singer. As a singer, she's really can act well. The dork chills I get watching her is just like, oh, fucking God, what is going on here?
Oh, my gosh.
So Allison...
Happy birthday, Mr. Vanguard.
And thank you to you, Prefect. Bye-bye. Yeah. And Prefect's... that Nancy person sits right next to him the whole time. It's just obnoxious. And it's just, ugh. And that sounds judgy because people fall for this shit. Just people fell for his bullshit. And we all have a point where we would fall for something. So I'm trying not to be too judgmental, but Keith is a big piece of shit. Anyway.
Yes.
Allison Mack told Sarah, if you really want to get a better sash, if you really want to be in with Keith, if you really want to be a player in Nxivm, you have to join DOS, and that's spelled DOS. Sarah says, well, what's DOS? Allison says, it's a secret organization for women in Nxivm, like double secret probation. It's beyond all of the women's groups that he's creating. This is our own thing. If you join this, you will get your sash, you will get everything you want. So before I get into DOS, you need to know a few other key people who are a part of the story. From The Vow, we meet Sarah, and Sarah has a gorgeous husband that I have a crush on, Anthony Ames, and his nickname is Nippy. I said that. Nippy.
Okay.
There's director Mark Vincente, his actress, singer wife, Bonnie Piez. She was in the Star Wars prequels. She is the one that, spoiler, takes in Luke Skywalker as a baby. It's the last scene.
Okay.
Okay. And actress Catherine Oxenberg. In the Escaping Nxivm podcast, Sarah describes her journey from being a struggling actress trying to make money between gigs to being a big rising star at Nxivm. And she said not only did the program give her confidence in auditions, but it helped her understand herself better, her man better, and the world better. And when she and Nippy were married, Nancy Salzman's daughter, Lauren Salzman, performed the ceremony, and Keith wrote their vows.
Oh my gosh.
That is how into it she was.
Damn.
So let's go to Mark Vincente. He was a director of a very famous and very weird documentary in 2004 called What the Bleep Do We Know? Do you remember this?
I know of it. I never saw it.
It's stupid as shit.
Okay. I won't bother then.
It was a phenomenon at the time. And it was one of those things like my sister was like, you got to see this. You got to see this. It's like people who are into New Age, which was like an adorable thing to be into at one time. The movie stars Marlee Matlin as a divorced woman who is lost and needs direction. And then, so a bunch of pseudoscience garbage is shoved down our throats. It's a bunch of pseudoscientists saying, we don't really know what's happening in the world and what we're capable of, and blah, blah, blah. This is 5 years before The Secret. So at the time, Mark was involved with Ramtha's School of Enlightenment. I didn't know what this was. I had to look it up. Who runs it is Jay-Z Knight, who claims he can channel a 30,000-year-old being called Ramtha, the Enlightened One. That's going to be its own episode one day because it's fucking bananas.
Cool party trick.
The movie makes millions of dollars. It's just like this indie film that does really well, and then it goes on DVD, and then it just sells like crazy. So Mark is already rich. He's born in South Africa, so he had to be rich. He's a white guy from South Africa. I always think they're rich. He makes money from this documentary, and right around the time the documentary is out, he leaves Ramtha, and he's just kind of searching for his next thing. And someone tells him about Keith Raniere and Nxivm. Mark goes to a few meetings. Mark is a super fan. He tells Keith, hey, I'm a famous director. I just directed this documentary. I want to talk about you. I want to film you. And Keith is like, that sounds great. So Mark joins the organization and he films everything. And I mean everything that happens at Nxivm for the next 10 years. He is Keith's right-hand man. He serves on the board of directors, and he makes a bunch of money from commissions from people who report to him. So he meets Bonnie Piez from the Star Wars prequels. Mm-hmm. They have tea. Bonnie's, by the way, adorable. She's from Australia. She's cute as a button. They meet, they have tea, and then they date, and then they marry. They're both super into Nxivm. And they help bring people into Nxivm because of their combined star power, whatever that would be. Catherine Oxenberg is an actress most known for her work in the 80s from the nighttime soap Dynasty. She has a daughter named India who was born in 1990, I believe. I remember her from Catherine's reality show, I Married a Princess, which was from Lifetime TV. Catherine Oxenberg is the daughter of Princess Elizabeth of Yugoslavia. So Catherine Oxenberg is technically a princess, and her daughter is the granddaughter of the princess of Yugoslavia. Her name is India. India in 2011 is almost 20 years old. She's shy. She's a wannabe chef. She tried college, but she didn't fit in. And she's just kind of looking for direction in her life. And someone says, hey, why don't you go to a session of Nxivm? Maybe that'll help you. India says to her mom, let's go to a session in LA. Let's go together. And Catherine at the time was going through a divorce. And she thought, well, what the fuck? Let's go.
Mm-hmm.
So they go to the sessions, and Catherine leaves like, I don't know. And India is like completely obsessed. So India says, hey, Mom, let's go to Albany and do like a week there. And Catherine, like I said, she's going through a divorce. Her daughter's like 19, 20 years old. She's like, well, the kid wants to hang out with me. I'll do a thing with her. We can afford it.
Yeah.
Soon enough, India moves to Albany and becomes a devoted follower of Keith and Allison Mack. India was left some money in her trust fund to go to college and to start her life. That was the only money she had given to her. She gave it all to Nxivm.
Oh.
I know. This bums me out.
Oh, that's, poor
know.
thing.
In Albany, Keith does kind of a radical thing that he grows his hair out, Jesus style. He's known for being mesmerizing and constantly surrounded by people. He has this knack for making people feel important and like they're all about to change the world. But he's also a moody prick, and he constantly tests the loyalty of people around him. Another thing about Keith, well, there's a few things. One, he stays up super late. He likes to go for long walks in the middle of the night, like 2 or 3 in the morning, like 10 or 12 miles.
He likes pina coladas. Getting caught in the rain.
Okay, so when he's going on these walks, he doesn't like to be... This is another thing. He doesn't like to be alone. He's an asshole, but he doesn't like to be alone. If you're the lucky chosen one, he will text you and say, hey, go for a walk with me. And that's supposed to feel like, whoa, I'm really special. You go for a walk with him. He records everything, because he records everything. And he just talks his bullshit for hours. So people are just up all the time with this guy.
Sounds awful.
It sounds fucking terrible.
Sleep's the best.
Well, that's what a person does if they're trying to... they do this on the reality shows, but it's also done by cult people. They navigate your food, options, like when are you going to eat, and they navigate your sleep options.
Yeah.
Right. So you're hungry, you're exhausted. You'll just do... I know when I'm tired and hungry, I'll do anything somebody asks me.
Right. Because you're like, I just want to get this shit over with so I can go home.
And take a nap.
But, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Sonia, there's also volleyball.
There's a volleyball?
This asshole is totally into volleyball. He plays it all the time. Indoor volleyball, not on the beach. He creates teams, and people have to play with each other. Because Keith sleeps all day, he likes to play volleyball at night when he's not walking. People have to sit in the stands and watch people play volleyball for hours. Late into the fucking night.
That sounds boring.
The dude is short for a dude. He's 5'7". He's growing out a full beard, and he's wearing like workout gear and a sweatband. And he looks like Michael J. Fox from Teen Wolf, but not in a good way. And I'll post pictures on Instagram and our Facebook group. He's a fucking doofus. Like, anybody looking at this guy, you're like, what? He is surrounded by people all the time that just want to hear him. I mean, for them, they're hearing it for the first time. And I'm trying to be compassionate and just like, he's a parasite. He's taking advantage of people left and right.
Why do all these cult leaders do the long hair and beard thing?
Jesus.
Why is that? Do you think that's all it is? They're just like, yeah, that's what I think Jesus looks like. So I'm going to look like that too.
Yeah, I totally think that it's a Messiah complex.
It's probably in some handbook. So you want to start a cult?
Yeah, Manson.
Step one,
Yeah.
grow out your hair and your beard.
I want to add one more person. Her name is Nikki Klein. She was in Battlestar Galactica, a show I never saw except for the last episode, which I thought was terrible, which I understand is not the way you're supposed to watch the show. I'm sorry.
Sometimes you start with the first one and then but you decided I'm going to go backwards. I actually watched Battlestar Galactica. I liked it.
Yeah, she was, I don't know who she played on there. You can look that up on IMDb. She's cute as a button. She has great skin. She's Canadian. That's important. I'll explain that later. And she was so absorbed in Nxivm that she asked to be let out of her contract for Battlestar Galactica in order to move to Albany and work for Keith and Allison full time. Let's get back to DOS. Remember that?
Yep.
Okay, buckle up, Sonia. This shit's going to get wild.
All right. I'm ready.
So we have Allison Mack, and she reaches out to Sarah and says to her, I know how you can get that sash that you want. If you join my secret group, you will learn more about Nxivm than anyone else, and it will blow your fucking mind. And Sarah's like, okay, I'm in. What do I have to do? Allison says, not so fast. You have to give me collateral first. And Sarah's like, what's that? She's like, I want a nude photo or a family secret or something in your life, a story in your life that's so humiliating that you will never tell anyone else, but you'll send it to me via document or MP3 file. If you give that to me, then you can join DOS.
Give me something that I can hold over you.
Collateral is a nice way of saying blackmail.
Yes.
Okay. Sarah, for whatever reason, gives her the collateral, whatever it is. I forget what it is, and that's when she learns that she is now a slave of Allison. Allison is now her master because DOS stands for Dominus Obsequious Seronium, or loosely translated, I don't know any Latin, master over slave woman. Sarah has to text Allison every morning and ask for permission for everything from when to wake up, if she can or can't have coffee, how much she weighs, everything she's eating, what she's doing that day, all the way up to when she can sleep at night, which is not early, by the way. It's late.
That sounds fucking terrible.
It's horrifying. And then if she does not respond right away, let's say 30 seconds, she gets punished. Punish means like you have to do 100 push-ups or whatever. You know, you have to think of like whatever the punishment is. Allison has a few slaves. One of them is India Oxenberg. Being a slave sucks. And Allison really gives them hell for not being skinny enough. Allison is a mere slip of a woman, as my mom would say. Very, very thin. India is allowed 500 calories per day and stops getting her period. She's about 21, 22 years old. The hours are long and arduous. And on top of that, all of the fucking volleyball.
That's the worst part.
Oh, that would be for me. Soon into the DOS program, Sarah and India find out there's actually something really worse. There's the worst part about being a slave to this organization. And that's the branding of the flesh.
What the fuck?
There is a ceremony where a group of women in DOS, you all have to get naked, and then you go to a room in Allison's apartment. They basically hold you down to a bed, and then they take a cauterizing pen and they brand you on your skin right by your pubic bone.
That sounds so painful.
It's super fucking painful. Everything is recorded, and Keith watches everything. Here's the worst part. I mean, it's hard. It's awful enough to be branded. The brand is actually, they don't know what it is. It just looks kind of weird. It's a combination of Keith and Allison's initials.
Oh my God.
Right.
Jesus Christ.
Sarah freaks out because she eventually has to tell her husband, Nippy, that she's been branded by her pubic bone.
Yeah.
So
he's going to notice something like that.
And Nippy was not happy when this shit happened. Mm-mm. So concurrent to this, we have the regular Nxivm members, and some of them are just people like Keith liked women young, pretty, and skinny. Anyone that was mouthy, anyone that was just kind of, he would ignore. And there's a few like if you weren't thin as a rail, they just took your money, but they never told you really anything. And then there's some people that went into debt like $100,000 to do this shit. Like it's
so sad.
It's repulsive. And there were some women's workshops like for Janess that Keith created. But Sonia, there was another men's society.
Oh.
The SOPs, the Society of Protectors.
SOPs.
SOPs.
Okay, not SOBs. Got it.
SOPs. People like Nippy and Mark join the organization to be better men. Now that their women are perfecting themselves, the men feel they need to step up and be real men. Not girly men like we have nowadays. They want to embrace their inner animal. So Keith, in his own words, says that men are fuck machines and they just think about sex all the time. They are men, capital letters. Mm-hmm. When Keith is leading a workshop with men and women, and it's a relationship workshop for couples, he ultimately describes men and women this way. Men are hunters and gatherers and protectors. They just want to fuck everyone in sight. They are programmed when they are little that they can't hit women, even when they deserve it. And this makes men mad. Women.
Okay.
Women are princesses. We just want men to look out for us, and we know we are pushing their buttons, but we don't care. We just want babies and someone to hit things. In The Vow, episode 8, there's a clip of Keith just letting his misogyny run free. And he's like snarling as he says all these things. He's so angry. He's so pissed off. No one says a thing.
This is fucking insane to me.
You're indoctrinated.
Yes.
You're just so indoctrinated that this is like, but this is what this what they paid money for. Like, it's like Scientology. When you really learn what it's all about, you're like, really? This is what it's all about.
Logically, I can look, I could sit here behind my podcasting microphone and be like, he could say these things to me and I'll be like, oh, fuck off. And I would leave. But the people that are probably this far into the process, they're very broken.
Yes.
And they're looking for something and they're willing to pay anything to like fill this hole in them. I feel sad for them.
You pay all this money, you put all this time in, you think there's going to be a payoff, and you realize like, okay, well, maybe this won't be the point, but maybe the next meeting will be better.
Yeah.
And that's his best. Here's why Seduced is the better documentary. And this is upsetting. I'm just saying it right now. In Seduced, we have several clips of Keith saying rape, incest, and sexual assault, sexual abuse are just constructs. You are only a victim if you think you are a victim, which is fucking bullshit. People need to stop saying this shit. There is a clip of him saying, you think you shouldn't rape a baby? I can give you a reason to rape a baby.
Fuck off. Fuck this guy.
He's a big piece of shit.
Did he give a good reason?
No.
Or does it end? No,
it just ends
because there is none, by the way. That's awful.
Yeah. Bonnie's only in this for a few years, a couple of years maybe, and she learns about DOS, and she's just around these women. She and her husband Mark are around these women in Albany. They're getting thinner and thinner, and she says they look like zombies. They're just, spouting weird things. And she goes home to her husband, who's like one of Keith's top men. He's top people in charge. He's on the board of directors. She says to her husband, I think there's something really messed up going on, and it's called DOS. The women have to give collateral, and it looks like blackmail to me, and Keith is really messed up. She says this to Mark, who was the director of What the Fuck is Going On. Mm-hmm. And she says, what should we do? And he says, give me data. Give me more data, and then I'll decide what we can do. Bonnie leaves his ass, and Nxivm.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like a wise choice.
Yes. But what The Vow never really gets into, and they mention in Seduce, but if you go back to and we'll talk more about Albany Times Union in your segment.
Yeah.
Keith has a lifelong problem with pedophilia. He prefers to have sex with children that are not the age of consent. He is a pedophile who likes really skinny women because they look like prepubescents.
Yes.
And they will stop getting their periods and they won't get pregnant. If they do, he makes them get an abortion or he ignores the child that he has. And he has a couple of kids. I'm not going to mention them because it's not their fault.
It's not their fault.
Right. All of these things we found out on the internet, by the way. Like, everything's there. In 2003, Forbes magazine had a cover story, when magazines still fucking mattered.
Yes.
How Keith was running a cult and he was recruiting the uber wealthy to protect him. This came from the Bronfman sisters of the Canadian Bronfman liquor fortune. I think you might remember them because back in our Ira Einhorn episode, he was a cult leader from the 1970s Philadelphia who murdered his girlfriend and got away with it for 20 years. He was supported by Barbara Bronfman of Montreal.
That's right.
She supported his skeevy ass until it was exposed that he was a total creep. Now we have Claire and Sarah Bronfman, who are daughters of Edgar Bronfman. They join in the early 2000s and give millions to cover Keith and his debts. They give him money to sue people like Natalie, his old girlfriend that I mentioned before. They sue people. They do the Scientology thing. Like, they sue people if they say anything against them.
Yes.
They paid $2 million for the Dalai Lama to visit Keith in Albany to give him some credibility. This is why I hate dynastic wealth. It's just wasted on idiots like this. They stayed loyal to Keith all this time. Put a pin on that. All right, so back to the 1980s. In 2012, the Albany Times Union did an amazing job of talking about Keith Raniere and his early years in Albany. And they basically hold his feet to the fire. In one of the articles titled In Raniere's Shadows, and all the links are in their show notes, they get into several examples of Keith's pedophilia. In 1984, Keith sexually assaulted a 15-year-old girl for several months. He told her sister that the girl was a Buddhist goddess that was meant for him. Another victim, her name was withheld. I'm not putting any names here because...
Right.
Yeah. She was 12 when this stuff happened to her. She was supposed to be tutored by Keith. Her parents worked for him at CBI. She had braces. She never kissed a boy before. Keith told her she didn't know how to hug people properly. She hugged like a little girl because she would keep her hips out behind her. He taught her how to really hug, and then he talked her into having sex with him. He sexually abused her.
That's awful.
For
what a fucking monster.
Several years. After a couple of years, she was done, and she told her mom what was going on, and her mom took her to the police, which is what a good mom does.
Mm-hmm.
And the police said, okay, why don't you wear a wire, and we'll catch him in the act of trying to seduce you. And she agonized over this because she's a teenager.
Right.
And why the fuck is she doing your job for you? Like, because no one's going to believe her. It's your word against his. You're just a girl. No one's going to listen to you. She didn't go through with the taping, all that stuff, but she said, I want this put in my records. And then her mother also backs her story. In 1984, there was another victim. Once again, Keith is about 24. She was 15. They meet at a theater company. He took her to the arcades and loved to play the game Vanguard. He sexually abused this girl for a couple of years, and he constantly complained about her weight. Why can't you be skinnier? He liked women.
Guy.
Oh, he's such a piece of shit. A friend of this victim, she said that in 84, Keith would crawl into the bedroom of this girl to abuse her. He was 24. She eventually died by suicide by the age of 33.
Asshole.
Fuck this guy.
Seriously, fuck this guy.
So we're going to put a lot of stuff in our Patreon bonus app because there's so much more I can talk about, but we have to wrap this up. I just want to say all of this information was available on the internet.
Yes.
And I don't blame people who were abused to not. So Sarah, Nippy, Mark, and Bonnie all leave Nxivm. And they join forces with Catherine Oxenberg to prosecute Keith for running a cult and sex trafficking. They all give evidence and testimony to the DA. Keith tries to run off to Mexico with Allison Mack and Nikki Klein, who, by the way, got married. And they only did it because Nikki was a Canadian citizen. She wanted to remain in America. But the local police gave him up and they brought him back. Thank Christ.
Thank you.
In March 2018, Lauren Salzman said they were planning a group sex section. When the police showed up, Keith ran into the closet to hide.
Oh, he's so brave.
He's such a piece of shit. So they pick him up and they take him back to Albany, to Brooklyn, and then Albany, and then back to Brooklyn. Keith was indicted on sex trafficking, sexual exploitation of a minor, and racketeering. He was found guilty of all the charges that he had against him, and he was sentenced to 120 years in prison. He recently started a podcast. He's claiming he's innocent, but
right.
He's sorry. Right. The next season of The Vow, the first season was 9 episodes. It did not need to be 9 episodes, by the way. But I feel like Mark and Sarah especially were trying to rehab their images.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But they both gave testimony against Keith. So it's like I'm
right.
back and forth about the both of them. Like, well, okay, but yeah. During the trial, on top of all of Keith and his enablers' creepiness, we found out how deep it really went. One of the victims talked about how when she was 15, Keith started sexually abusing her. He eventually put her in an apartment in Albany, and he kept her there. Nxivm paid for the lease in cash. She was Mexican, and he always threatened to have her deported if she told anyone. And she had 2 sisters, by the way. They were there too.
Monster.
Keith put her on a starvation diet and held her older sister captive. They both became pregnant, and he arranged for them both to get abortions. When she finally left in 2017, she told the court, "When I walked away, I had the mind of a 15-year-old and the body of a 27-year-old. I missed out on incredibly basic things people learn in their youth. He hid his abuse behind ideas and concepts of nobility. I only now see that there was nothing noble about abusing children, abusing his authority, and taking advantage of my natural inclination as a child to trust adults." In March of 2019, Nancy Salzman pled guilty to charges of conspiracy, racketeering under the jurisdiction of New York. In July of 2018, the court found that Salzman, Raniere, Claire Bronfman, Allison Mack, Kathy Russell's another person, and Salzman's daughter Lauren committed the numerous crimes of extortion, forced labor, sex trafficking, money laundering, wire fraud, and obstruction of justice.
Jesus. Damn.
Claire Bronfman pleaded guilty to conspiracy to conceal and harbor illegal aliens for financial gain and the fraudulent use of identification. The prosecution requested 5 years in prison. In September 2020, she was sentenced to 6 years and 9 months in prison by a federal judge. Sarah Bronfman, she's being sued. The Bronfmans are being sued by 80 victims of Nxivm, saying they were victims of sex trafficking and forced labor. Allison Mack, she was arrested in Brooklyn by the FBI. She's awaiting to be sentenced. Now, Mark Vicente and his wife Bonnie, they're together. They're in Portugal. Mark is writing his biography. I'll be interested in what he has to say. India is doing great.
That's good.
India,
good.
And India gave testimony, and India's mom got her out, and India gave testimony. She's engaged to a chef. Is a cat mom. She's doing really well. Yes, I know. That made me so happy when I heard that. I was like, okay, India. Catherine Oxenberg is a badass. She just kept fighting for her daughter all this time.
That's awesome.
Keith was in a jail in Brooklyn for a while. And every night, 50 or so diehard members of Nxivm would dance outside of Keith's Brooklyn jail cell.
Oh, my God.
One of them was Nikki Klein. And that is our creep this week, Keith Raniere.
What a fucking monster.
He's a shithead.
Listen to our other podcast. What a monster. Seriously, fuck that guy.
He's the worst.
God,
and I didn't say everything. There's so much more I could say.
I know.
I'm trying to keep it down so it's not 12 hours, but yeah.
There's a reason there's 2 documentary series and so many books. He's a real fucking piece of shit.
He is.
Ugh. It must feel really good to be done.
I am so glad to be done with this, to be honest with you.
Do you want to hear about some folks who are not a creep?
Please, 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 please.
Okay. So before the multiple documentaries and before all the life sentence and all that stuff, there were a couple of local reporters in Albany who were actually writing stories about Raniere. Did I pronounce that right?
Whatever.
Is it Raniere? Vanguard, Donkey Kong. They wrote a whole bunch of stories about Frogger. So before the Forbes story in 2003, the Albany Times Union reporter Dennis Yusico. Let's say Yusico. All right. This is actually really interesting to me as someone who used to cover this stuff. He was at the local planning commission meeting, and he noticed on the agenda Frogger, our man Frogger, was trying to get a permit for a really large building for a new venture and it was, quote, a human potential school. Yeah. And he was like, huh. So he wrote a story. Hey, this guy's trying to open this new, get this building built here. Isn't that interesting? Or whatever. And there were a lot of people protesting it already because at this point, Nxivm was already on people's radar for being cultish. So he started kind of just following the story. And then in 2003, later that year, Donkey Kong is having his big Vanguard birthday bash, the one that's a week long. And the reporter showed up there, just started talking to people. And then he wrote a couple of stories about how this is a cult-like thing that is going here. He actually uses he talks about ESP and the secretive cult-like enterprise. He says, in federal court papers, they allege the programs have torn apart families, intimidated distractors through lawsuits, and controlled the minds of students. He was already writing these stories in 2003. And then in 2004, he actually wrote a story about the death of a Nxivm student named Kristen Marie Snyder, who disappeared in Anchorage during one of those 16-day courses. So he wrote a story about that. And then in 2006, another reporter from the Metroland, which I believe was one of those alternative weeklies out there, named Chet Hardin, wrote a story with Tony Natalie, the former girlfriend. I believe you mentioned her. Yeah. So he wrote some articles about her and also bringing to light this cult-like thing. Eventually he would go on to write a book about it. It's called The Program: Inside the Mind of Keith Raniere and the Rise and Fall of Nxivm. She wrote it. He and he kind of co-wrote it, because she's not a writer and he is. So anyway, he wrote a couple of articles for Metroland about this cult. And then in 2012, investigative reporter Jim Odato and a features reporter named Jennifer Gish paired up, and they wrote a 4-part series in the Albany Times Union about Nxivm. And one installment was just all about his history with women and minors. There was another one about the stuff about having sex and seeing the blue light and all of that. Like that was in one of the installments. And the story included women who went on the record, like telling what he did. And they actually won awards for this series. And then Gish kind of dropped out. She like got another job or whatever, but Odato kept going. And eventually the Nxivm, as you mentioned, they like to file lawsuits.
They're litigious.
Yes. So they filed their lawsuits, and then the paper fired the reporter instead of like actually fucking standing by their reporter and his work. They threw him out. They threw him under the bus. They fired him.
They have
the
Bronsons have a lot of money, I have to just say. I mean, they have millions and millions and millions. So I get it. It's a little paper in Albany, but it's still fucked up.
These are just, I'm going to mention a couple other reporters too, actually, and then I'm going to finish that thought. But after Jim left, a couple of other reporters picked it up. So one was like Brendan Lyons and Robert Gavin, and they kind of just started following the story through court cases. So they weren't doing like super investigative work. They just kind of focused on the court cases, but they kept following the story. And then in the summer of 2017 is when the New York Times came out with their big story. And that's when things kind of took off from there. Like they published their story, it details everything. And then 2 months later, the Justice Department starts their investigation. So it kind of took like, and in that New York Times story, they actually link to all the Albany Union Times, did I say stories? So it's like, it's kind of a lot of these local reporters did the legwork, and then the New York Times finally made it like legit and something actually happened. It sucks that it took 9 years for it to like see the light of day. Exactly.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of the reporters, Hardin, actually said nobody believed it. I think it's important. It's an important part of this that until the New York Times story broke, nobody believed any of it. And I wanted to call it out because these kinds of smaller newspapers are going away. Right. Like there aren't a lot of investigative reporters on a local level anymore. A lot of these newspapers just have page designers, and they're all pulling their stories from the Associated Press or Reuters or things like that. And nobody's doing this kind of work anymore. Like nobody's going to the planning commission meeting and reading the agenda, and these kinds of things are not happening. And it's it fucking sucks.
Yeah, it's a shame because you're right, because those are the people that like the Aaron Brockovich story.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's stuff like that. Like that's those local reporters that really care what happens. Like it's when people are like, I don't want to vote for president because who cares? It doesn't matter, blah, blah, blah. You know, the electoral college. It's like, no, you need to vote because on the local level.
Yeah. We talked about this before with Jeffrey Epstein. Mm-hmm. There was also a local reporter there. It was Julie K. Brown.
Yep.
And that's another example of like a local reporter. You know, Miami's bigger, but it's still
struggling.
Still struggling. And that's a local reporter who just stayed on that story and didn't give up. And we just need more of that. So I wanted to give a shout out to those reporters. And a lot of them are not working in newspapers anymore. And I think that's a huge bummer. Like Jim Odato is now a professor at the University of Albany. Jennifer Gish is a vice president for marketing at like a college. Chet Hardin actually wrote that book. The first reporter, Dennis Usoko, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, but I'm probably not, works as a communications director for the Berkshire District Attorney's Office. So the newspapers lost some hardworking reporters, it seems. It's a bummer.
It's a total bummer. And I think, I don't know about you, but like I try to like, I have online subscriptions to a few different places because I want to keep them. If I use them a lot for a source, I want to be able to pay the reporters. So, your local paper, maybe it's like, $10 a year or $20 a year. I mean, it could really make a big difference. And what happens to you locally will affect your life. I mean,
you think it's not important. Obviously, national, worldwide stuff, it's all super important. But like some stupid shit or it seems stupid,
right,
isn't stupid, and it really will impact you in a big way, especially things like your school board, your city council meetings. Like, they decide things for your entire town that even something as dumb as where to put a fucking Starbucks impacts your life.
It can absolutely. So I would say this: support your local paper. Like, buy a digital subscription for a year, and just, and feel, and that's the one thing you can do. And honestly, and this reporter from Forbes in 2003, I'm going to read it. Michael Friedman. I mean, he was saying, like, this guy is a fucking lunatic. Like, why are you following him? And everybody had access to it. But, there's also the thing we have to remember to have compassion for is, like, these are people that want to do good. They want to be a good force in the world. And you can fall for someone that promises you so much. And if they, if they say that this is my technology, it's different and it's interesting, it's unique. And it was none of that. Keith Raniere stole from everybody.
Right.
And they all steal. Manson stole from people, please.
Yep.
Ron Hubbard stole from people. Like, they all steal, but they all kind of come up with their own thing. And just, protect yourself. But be compassionate. And I'm so glad that India's okay. But I'm so mad at the women who were sexually assaulted as kids by this asshole.
Yes.
And have to live with that.
Yeah, they have to live with it for the rest of their lives, and that fucking sucks. It's bullshit. Makes me angry.
Yeah, same here. I mean, it's like Matthew McConaughey has a new autobiography out. I haven't read it, but he talks about being sexually assaulted by someone. And he says, but you know what? I don't choose to see myself as a victim. So blah, 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 blah. I'm like, well, that's great for you. And it makes it easy for someone else to not have compassion for a person who was assaulted.
Right. Well, if you would just choose not to be a victim, it wouldn't be such a big deal. Fuck off.
Yeah, fuck off with that shit. All right, Sonia.
Good job, Margot. You did such a good job.
Thank you, Sonia. You did a great job, too.
Thanks.
You. All right, you guys. We're exhausted. I gotta drink some wine. I gotta relax now. It's the holiday weekend. Okay. So please follow us on all the things, social media. We especially love it when you use the Annie Potts GIF of we got one from Ghostbusters, Twitter, Facebook, whatever, Instagram, whatever. We love suggestions of whatacreeppodcast@gmail.com. Just spell it all out. We love suggestions. And we have a private Facebook group, What a Creep Podcast group. Ask to join. If you're not a total fucking weirdo, you can join. And Sonia, where can they find you?
You can find me at thesoniashow.com and The Sonia Show on Twitter and Instagram. And if you like the sound of our voices, we also co-host another podcast called Dorking Out, where we talk about movies. And we are starting a new tradition this year with our episode that comes out after Thanksgiving. We're going to talk about different versions of A Christmas Carol. So we're kicking it off with Diva's Christmas Carol. And I'm going to watch it right after this. Yay!
It's so good. You're going to love it.
Where can people find you, Margot?
You can find me on social media at Brooklyn Fit Chick, mostly for Twitter and Instagram. And my blog is brooklynfitchick.com. .com. We'll be back next week with a new creep. So in the meantime, practice social distancing, wash your hands, and don't be a creep.
Creep.
Thank you for listening to us talk about creeps. You can follow us at What a Creep Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
But don't follow us too closely.
You can email us your creepy stories at whatacreeppodcast@gmail.com.
But please keep your dick pics to yourself.